Hey, welcome back to the course. In this lesson, we will look at these control buttons for these two preview windows. So this window, as I already mentioned, this is called the preview monitor or preview window. And these are the control buttons for that. And then this is the program monitor, and these are the control buttons for that. This program monitor shows the whatever lies in the timeline, and this shows the preview of whatever lies in this media pool. So let me bring this playhead somewhere in the middle. So this of course plays the video, and right now it's kind of jerky because it hasn't been optimized for playback here, but this one has been optimized, so this plays pretty smoothly. So again, this plays in the forward direction, this stops it, and this button plays it in the reverse direction. And if I want to go all the way to the beginning, this is the button for that. So this will bring this playhead all the way to the beginning. This will bring it all the way to the end. Okay, so that's the working of these buttons. What this does is, if this is on, as right now this is shown in orange color, so this is on or enabled. So once this video ends in the preview, it will loop back again, so it will be playing continuously. So right now it has ended, but if I play it again, it will keep playing over and over again. See? Okay, then what does this next tool do? As you can see here, it is called match frame tool. And what this does is that when I set my preview to a particular frame and I press this tool, what this does is it automatically moves this playhead in the timeline to that particular frame in the timeline. So this, the name of this video is clip, and it has already been placed in the timeline. And right now the location of this playhead in the timeline is random. As soon as I bring this cursor or playhead in the preview to a particular location, let's say this particular frame, and I press this button, it will automatically bring the playhead to that particular frame in the timeline, as you can see by the preview of this program monitor. And you can see both of these are exactly same. Why? Because I set this frame, press this button, and it automatically moved this playhead in the timeline to that particular frame whose preview is visible here. In the end, we have these two tools which we already saw in the previous lessons. One is the mark in tool, which is basically to mark the starting of a particular portion of a clip that I want. So let's say if I want to pick a particular portion of this clip starting from this particular place, I press this mark in button, so it starts from here, and let's say I want to end it here, so I press this mark out button, and only this portion of the clip has been highlighted, which is now selected. So this mark out button is same as pressing I on the keyboard, and mark out button is same as pressing O on the keyboard. So now again, I can just drag and drop it to the timeline, and I can drag and drop it multiple times. There is no limit to that. And also I can change these in and out points any number of times I want. So right now I just changed these in and out points, and I can further bring them to the timeline. And right now you see that this represents a bigger portion of the original clip. And as you can see, this portion is longer than the earlier portion because now these in and out points are farther apart. So these are the control buttons for the preview window. And as you can see, these are exactly the same for the program monitor, and their working is also the same, except for just maybe these two buttons. And this one, what this does is, let me bring my playhead to one of these cuts. This button, it basically moved the playhead to the very beginning, and this moved it to the very end. But when it comes to the timeline, these buttons work a little bit differently, because instead of bringing using this button, instead of bringing the playhead to the very beginning, it basically moves in steps, one cut at a time. So pressing this once, it moves to the left one step, one cut at a time. So pressing it once more will bring it to this cut, and pressing it once more will bring it here, and then here, and now to the end. So it basically traveled to the very beginning in different steps based on how many cuts it saw in the beginning. Similarly, this moves it to the right side on the timeline, but one cut at a time. See? So that's a little bit of difference in working of these two buttons between this window and this window. Now here I think it's a good time to introduce you to two more keyboard shortcuts to navigate through this timeline. The first one is function plus left arrow key. So function plus left arrow key, it will bring the playhead to the very end of the timeline, and right now it's already at the very end. But if I press function plus left arrow key, now it will bring me to the start of the playhead. So function plus left arrow to bring it to the start, function plus right arrow to bring it to the end. The other shortcut is the up and down arrows to move this playhead in the timeline to the left or to the right, one cut at a time. So if I want to move it to the left side one cut at a time, I'll press the up arrow, and by pressing this up arrow again and again, I am moving one cut at a time to the left side of the timeline. Similarly, if I want to travel to the right side one cut at a time in the timeline, I can keep pressing the down arrows, and every time it basically moves to the next cut to the right of it. And you will notice that when you are learning Davinci Resolve, you will find yourself using mouse or trackpad a lot to navigate around. But as time passes by and you get more comfortable with Davinci Resolve, you will start using these keyboard shortcuts naturally, because these keyboard shortcuts make your workflow much easier and much faster. Anyway, that's it for this lesson, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Hello and welcome. In this lesson, we will learn how to work with tracks or layers. The concept of tracks or layers is applicable for most video editing softwares. You will have two kinds of layers or tracks. One is the video tracks and the other is the audio tracks. So the word layer or track, these can be used interchangeably. And here, this is a video track and this is the audio track. Okay, so let me undo that. Let me delete this timeline, and you see that as soon as I drag a clip to the timeline, these tracks are automatically created, and by default there is one video track and there is one audio track. And in Davinci Resolve, video tracks and audio tracks are separated by this horizontal line in the timeline. Okay, so above that, here you see this is V1, so V means video. So this is the first video track, V1. If there is another video track, it would be V2 on top of it. Similarly, right now by default, there is one audio track, A1, A for audio. And if there is another audio track, it would be A2, it would be below that. Video tracks are shown in Davinci in blue color, and the audio tracks are shown in green color. And here are the controls. So these are the controls for this video track, and these are the controls for this audio track. And if you are new to video editing, let me also introduce you to the difference between track and clip. So this horizontal section of the timeline, horizontal section, this is the video track. Okay, so this is the first video track, all of it. This is the second video track if it exists. Similarly, this horizontal portion is the audio track, and this is the empty part of the track. Here we have some clip, and each track can have one or more than one clips. So right now in this video track there is one video clip, and similarly for this audio track there is one audio clip, but we can have more clips added to each of these tracks. And these are the video and audio tracks, the first video track and the first audio track, which were created by default when I added a clip here. And I can create more video or audio tracks by right clicking in this area, and here if I click this add track button, it will create a new video track. So you can see this was the V1, and now this is another video track called V2. And I can also create a new audio track by right clicking in this area, and when I press this button here, I have more options for audio track. I can create a mono track or stereo or 5.1, 7.1 adaptive, and there are so many different types of adaptive. So let me create a mono track, and this is another audio track that has been created. Its name is A2, and similarly I can also delete the existing tracks by right clicking on them and pressing delete track. Similarly I can press this right click on this video track and delete it. And I can also create more tracks by dragging this clip and dropping it into, if I drag and drop it into this portion of the track, no new track will be created. But if I drop it above it or below here, now automatically another video and audio track will be created, because this clip, it contains both audio and video. If it was just video track without any audio, only a video track, a new video track would be created. And even after adding these clips to the timeline, I can further drag them and drop them to different tracks. So here it is in the top track, but I can drag it and drop it into the track below it. If I want to delete this clip from this track, I can just right click here, and this is delete selected. So that particular clip would be deleted from this track. But let me just undo that for a moment. So what if we bring one video track above another video track? What it does is the upper video track would hide the video track below it, right? So here, this is the program monitor, which shows the preview of what lies in the timeline at the current position of playhead. So I'm just scrubbing through this video track, which is in the first V1 position. And as you can see, as soon as I bring it, okay, right now this is the same clip, so it's hard to tell the difference, but let me go ahead and delete it, and let me bring another one. Okay, so now in this position, there is no overlap, so I can clearly see the lower video track. But as soon as their junction is reached, now this upper track, it basically hides the track below that. And now in this whole area, I'm only able to see the upper track. This portion of the lower track is hidden by this portion above it. So in this way, when there are more video tracks above each other, the uppermost video track would be hiding all the video tracks below it. Similarly, for audio tracks, there can also be overlap, which will basically mix those two different audios. So here there is an overlap between A1 and A2. So here both of these would be played at once. So these audio tracks would be mixed. Now, what if I want to change the type of audio track? Let's say I initially selected it to be a stereo, but let's say I want to make it a mono track. So what I'll do is I'll right click here and press this option, change track type to, and here I can select any of these types. So initially it was stereo, but let me make it mono. So these leftmost characters, these are the names for each track. So this is the V2 video track, video 1, audio 2, and so on. And let's look at these controls. So these are the controls for this video track. These are the controls for this video track. These are the controls for this audio track. So let's see what each of these does. The first one on this leftmost side, this is basically the lock button. So if I lock it, now I cannot make any further edits to this video clip. Similarly, if I lock any of these tracks, then no more further changes can be made to that particular clip. Then there is another control for these video tracks, which is this frame button. So what this does is, right now this is disabled, but if I enable it, it would turn orange and there would be a crossed line on top of that, which means that this track is hidden from the timeline. So you see initially there was an overlap, so here this was being hidden from this track, but right now I can scrub through that and I can still see the lower track because the upper video track has been hidden because this hidden button is enabled. If I disable it and the timeline playhead is in the overlap position, I would again be able to see this clip and it would start hiding the clip below that. See? So this has become visible again and it starts hiding that. But if I disable it, now the lower one becomes visible because the upper one is hidden. Now what does this M button do in these audio tracks? It basically mutes a particular track. So if I press this, it will turn orange and it will basically mute everything that lies in this particular track. So when I play it, basically I won't be able to hear any of this audio because it has been muted. If I bring this clip to the same audio track, this will also be hidden now, right? So if I play it, I won't be able to hear any audio. But if I enable this, now there would be some audio, although the audio levels are very low here, but I can still hear some of the camera clicks. So that is how we can hide a video clip from the timeline or mute an audio clip in the timeline. And we can use this solo or S button to mute all the other audio tracks except for the interested one. So if I enable it, it turns green, which means now all the other tracks have been muted except the interested one. And if I disable that, now that mode is disabled. And lastly, out of all these tracks, you can choose one active audio track and one active video track. So out of all the video tracks, I can make one of them active at a time. And from all the audio tracks, I can make one of them active at that time. So right now we have 2 audio and 2 video tracks, but V1 out of these 2 video tracks, V1 is active, and out of these 2 audio tracks, A1 is active. What this means is that if I insert some more footage to the current position of the playhead, so let me bring the playhead to the end. Now, if I insert some more footage, it would automatically go to the default audio and video layers. So for example, here there is a new clip that I can insert. So if I drag it and press the insert option, now it would automatically go to this particular position of the timeline and it automatically is inserted into the active video and audio tracks, which are A1 and V1. Well, let's say if I undo this, right now the playhead is in this position, but right now the active tracks are V1 and A1 as shown with these orange rectangles. So now if I want to make V2 active, what I'll do is I'll simply click on V2 and now this is disabled, not disabled, but it is no more active track and this is the active track now. Similarly, if I want this track to receive the audio of this clip, I will press this and now this is no more active. This is the active audio track. So now instead of these 2 active tracks, now the active video track is here and active audio track is here. And see what happens when I insert this clip. It won't go to these audio and video tracks as it did initially. This time it is inserted automatically into the active video track, which is here, and active audio track, which is here. So that's how you can organize your media into layers or tracks, and that's how you select which tracks are going to receive the clips when they are sent to the timeline. So far, we have learned how to add videos to the media pool and work with timelines and layers. So now we are in good shape to learn how to do the editing, and we will explore that in the next lesson. Hey there! In this lesson we will learn about the inspector menu in Davinci Resolve 15. So if you go to the top right in this edit workspace, here at the top right you will see a panel named inspector. So if you click that, this panel will come up, and right now it says nothing to inspect. But if you select one of the clips from the timeline, it will bring up its details. So one of the clips from the timeline, not from the media pool. So if you keep selecting any of these clips from the media pool, it won't show any details about them. It will only inspect clips in the timeline. So these are the details for this particular clip, and when I select a different clip, now these details would change. And inside the inspector menu here you will see this composite tab, transform tab, then we have cropping, retime and scaling, and lens correction. And if you're not able to see these options, make sure that you are in the video tab, not the audio tab. Audio tab has different options, of course. So right now we are seeing the video tab. So the first thing here under this video tab is composite. So under the composite tab, there are two options: the composite modes. These are all the composite modes, and then we have opacity. And opacity means how transparent one layer is to the underlying layer. So right now the opacity is set to 100%. That means it is totally opaque. So if I bring one clip on top of the other, right now this is selected and its opacity is 100%. So I cannot see any portion of the lower clip because this is basically hiding whatever lies underneath. If I decrease the opacity, now you see that on one extreme it becomes totally transparent to whatever lies underneath, and if I increase it to 100%, now it becomes totally opaque. So these are the two extremes: totally opaque and totally transparent to what lies underneath. So that is how the opacity works. And then we have the composite modes. So you can select different composite modes. And if you don't know what these composite modes are, right now here we have two video layers overlapping, and the playhead is also in the same region where the overlap is. So if I select add, you will see a different effect takes place because it basically combines the overlapping layers in different ways. Right now it is adding them. Then we can choose different composite modes and you will be able to get different results, right? So pretty interesting. Then we have lighten color, linear dodge, and so many other options. And you can further modify this effect for a particular composite mode by playing around with the opacity. Okay, so you can make this effect stronger or weaker by decreasing or increasing opacity for a particular composite mode. So this is the color burn, and I can make its effect stronger or weaker by playing around with the opacity. So that's the composite mode and opacity. And right now you can see that I have changed these values from the original default values. So if at any time when you're working with any of these options in Davinci Resolve, and if you want to go back to the original default value, wherever you see this curved arrow, this means reset to the original value. So originally it was set at normal, but right now it is not at the default value. So by pressing this arrow, I can move it back to the original value. Similarly, the opacity, I can reset it. Next, we have the transform tool. And here there are lots of different options for transforming the clip. You can make this clip bigger or smaller by playing around with the zoom values. So zoom X and zoom Y, and right now there is a link between them, which means that both of them, if I increase or decrease one of them, the other one will increase or decrease by the same proportion because this link is selected. But if I disable that, now I can increase or decrease the scale for x-axis independent of the scale on the y-axis. Usually it's good to have these linked, and let me go back and reset them. Then we have the position. So I can change the position of this upper clip by changing, right now it is selected, so changing these values will change the position of this upper clip. And if I increase its x position, right now you see the lower clip becomes visible from this edge. Similarly, I can increase or decrease the y value, and now you can see I can see the underlying layer from both these edges. But let me just go ahead and reset. Then we have rotation angle and anchor point. So these are kind of linked to each other. So right now the anchor point is 0, 0, which means basically the center of the picture. And if I now rotate it, now it will rotate the picture around the anchor point, which is 0, 0, or the center of the picture. See? But what if I change this anchor point? What if I make it, let's say 100? 100 and 100. Now rotating this picture would rotate it around a different point, right? Let me further maybe change it to 200 to further see the difference. And now you can see that anchor point is somewhere here. No, it's off center basically. So by changing the anchor point, I can have it rotate around a different point away from the center. So that is how the anchor point and rotation basically work hand in hand. I'll reset these. Then we have pitch, which basically rotates the clip around a horizontal axis. And then we have yaw, which is basically rotating the picture around a vertical axis. Okay. And lastly, we have these flip options, flip around a vertical axis, so it will basically flip it horizontally. Then we have flip around a horizontal axis, which will basically flip it in the vertical direction. So if I flip it, now it will become upside down. So these are all the transform tools, and let me go ahead and reset those. Next we have cropping, and under cropping we have 5 different options. So 4 of these are basically to crop it from one of the 4 edges. So I can crop it from the left edge, I can crop it from the right edge, top edge and bottom edge. So now basically I cropped it from all the 4 edges, and now this is the new size of the cropped clip. And let me move it away from this overlapping region, so now I can only see this clip. And then there is a fifth option, which is called softness, and by default of course its value is 0. So if I move it to the right, it will become positive, greater than 0, and it will start making its edges softer to the outside direction, right? And you will see that as I increase it further and further, the size of the clip will start increasing because it is making the edges softer outside the edges. If I bring it back to close to 0, now here is almost this original size and there is no softness on the edges. If I bring it to the negative side, now it will start shrinking the clip because it is basically making its edges softer inwards. Okay, so this basically shrinks it and this expands it, and both basically make its edges softer either towards inside or outside. I'll go ahead and reset all of these. Down below we have these retime and scaling and lens correction options. These are a bit advanced features for you right now, so we may cover them later in the course. That's all for the video tab. And then we have the next tab, which is for audio. Here you can play around with the volume, pitch and equalizer settings for a specific clip. So if I change the volume level for a particular clip, you can see here is the audio level, and this white horizontal line, it basically signifies the audio level for this particular clip. So as I slide this volume bar across, you can see that this horizontal volume bar will also go up or down accordingly. So here, this is the full volume, here is the minimum volume, and here is something in between. So this is how I can change the volume of a clip inside the inspector menu. So these are all the options inside the inspector menu. And that's it for this lesson. I'll see you around in the next lesson.